Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here and listening to this gripping revenge story from Revenge Argonne. Today's story takes place in New Haven. My name is Danica Hayes, and the night my life got decided, it happened over a chipped kitchen counter and 5 envelopes I had dreamed about since middle school. Stanford, MIT, Princeton, Yale, Harvard. Full rides, all of them. I was still in my diner uniform, grease on my sleeves, when I lined the letters up like they were made of glass. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the pages, but I managed to whisper, almost to myself, I did it. That was when my sister snatched the stack right out of my hands. I did not even have time to breathe before she fed the first acceptance letter into the shredder. The sound of the blades chewing my future was louder than anything I had ever heard. College is useless, she said, eyes locked on mine while another letter turned into white confetti. You want to help this family? Get a job. I turned to my mom, waiting for her to stop it, to say something. Anything. She just folded her arms and nodded toward the shredder like it was a trash can. We are only investing in the kid who can bring in money now, she said. You have 2 weeks to find full-time work, or you are out of this house. By the time the last Harvard letter disappeared, my scholarships were gone, my future was gone, and so was any doubt about what I meant to them. I did not scream. I did not cry. I just watched, memorizing every word, every smirk, every second. Because if you stay with me until the end, you will see exactly how the girl whose future died in a shredder made the people who destroyed it pay for every single strip of paper. I did not sleep that night. The sound of the shredder kept replaying in my head, like my brain was stuck on a broken loop. Every time I blinked, I saw the Stanford seal turning into strips of paper. The funny thing is, they thought they had killed my only shot. What they never bothered to notice was that I had scanned every single letter the day they arrived and uploaded them to my school Google Drive, then forwarded copies to my guidance counselor. I did that because I knew, deep down, that if anyone was going to sabotage me, it would come from inside this house. My sister's name is Courtney. My mom is Linda. That night, the two of them sat on the couch in the living room, watching some loud reality show like nothing had happened, like they had not just taken a chainsaw to my future. From my room, I could hear them laughing over the canned studio audience. I packed in the dark. 3 pairs of jeans, some t-shirts, my old Chromebook, my lab notebook with coffee stains on the cover, and the tip money I had been stashing inside a ripped textbook, crumpled bills from bussing tables and stocking shelves at the bookstore. It was not much, but it was mine. Around midnight, I opened my email and typed a single line to the only adult who had ever treated my brain like it was worth something, my chemistry teacher, Ms. Park. I told her what happened, attached the scanned letters again, and asked one question. If my family destroys the originals, do I still have a chance? I did not expect her to answer that late, but she did. 10 minutes later, she replied that the universities already had digital records, that the letters could be reissued, and that if I needed a place to land in Boston while I figured things out, she had a pull-out couch and a key with my name on it. If they are willing to throw away what you earned, she wrote, you do not owe them your future. At 2 a.m., I slipped my backpack over my shoulders and walked past the living room. Courtney was asleep with her phone in her hand, some sponsored makeup video still looping on the screen. My mom was snoring in her recliner, an empty wine glass on the floor. I stood there for a full minute, waiting to feel guilty. Nothing came. I left my house key on the kitchen counter next to the dead shredder and walked out into the cold Connecticut air. The bus station in New Haven smelled like stale coffee and exhaust. I bought a one-way ticket to Boston with shaking hands, sat in the back row, and turned my phone off before the bus even pulled away. No dramatic goodbye text, no long speech, just one quiet promise to myself as the lights of my neighborhood blurred into the dark. If I ever came back, It would not be as the girl begging for a second chance. It would be as the woman they never believed I could become. Boston did not feel like a fresh start at first. It felt like barely controlled free fall. Ms. Park picked me up from South Station in a beat-up gray sedan, handed me a thermos of coffee, and drove me to her tiny apartment in Cambridge, 3 blocks from the Charles River. Her pull-out couch was really just a lumpy futon shoved into the corner of her living room, but to me, it felt like the safest place on earth. For the first few weeks, I slept in my jeans with my backpack as a pillow, terrified that if I unpacked, the universe would somehow realize I did not deserve any of this and rip it away. During the day, we called admissions offices. Ms. Park, whose full name I learned was Dr. Helen Park, spoke to them in a language I did not know how to use yet. Confident, precise, absolutely certain that I belonged in those lecture halls. She explained the situation, sent verified copies of my acceptance emails, forwarded my transcripts. One by one, the schools confirmed what she had already told me. My future did not live or die in that shredder. The records were digital, the offers still valid. When the dust finally settled, I chose MIT. It was the best financial aid package, the strongest biochemistry program, and it meant I could stay in Boston, close to the one adult who had proven she was in my corner. The next years blurred into a relentless loop of lecture halls, late-night lab sessions, and side jobs nobody on campus ever saw. In the mornings, I was the kid asking too many questions in organic chemistry. At night, I was stocking shelves, wiping down tables, and counting crumpled dollar bills under the flickering light of a back room. While other students flew home for Thanksgiving, I stayed in Cambridge, eating instant noodles on that same futon, checking my bank balance and my lab results, like they were equally important measurements of survival. Somewhere around my junior year, a postdoc in Dr. Park's lab let me help with a small project on autoimmune markers. I watched as fluorescent bands on a gel lit up exactly where we had predicted, and something clicked so hard in my chest it almost hurt. For the first time, I saw a version of my life where I was not just escaping something, I was building something. I stayed for grad school, then a postdoc, then a position at a research institute in Stockholm that specialized in immune system disorders. The winters there were brutal, the kind of cold that cut through every layer. But inside the lab, we were on fire. My team and I mapped out a pathway that helped explain why the body sometimes turned on itself, why people ended up trapped in their own skin. The work led to a new kind of treatment, one that cut flare-ups in half for patients who had tried everything else. Papers came next, then patents, then, eventually, money. Royalties from the drug deal wired into an account I had opened under my own name, no co-signers, no family. I kept my lifestyle simple. A small apartment, cheap furniture, the same beat-up sneakers I had worn as a grad student. On the morning the Nobel committee called, I was in the lab in the same faded hoodie I had worn during my qualifying exams, squinting at a spreadsheet. My phone lit up with an unfamiliar number from Sweden, and when the voice on the other end said the words, "You have been awarded," my first thought was not about history or speeches or headlines. It was a flash of white dad across a kitchen counter in Connecticut, the sound of a shredder chewing through Harvard stationery, and the quiet promise I had made on a bus in the middle of the night. On the night the world found out what my name meant, Courtney and Linda were sitting in a kitchen that looked nothing like the one I had left. The counters were peeling laminate, the overhead light buzzed like a dying fly, and a stack of unopened medical bills leaned against a chipped ceramic fruit bowl. Courtney was hunched over her cracked phone, trying to sell a sequined jacket on a live stream to a handful of bored viewers. Linda stirred powdered cheese into a pot of boxed macaroni with the kind of tired focus you only see in people who have spent their whole lives stretching groceries to the end of the month. The TV in the corner was on more for noise than anything else, set to a news channel they barely watched. They were mid-argument over whether to pay the electric bill or the minimum on a credit card when the anchor's tone shifted and the words, "Live from Stockholm," floated into the room. Courtney rolled her eyes, ready to tune it out, until the anchor said my name. Dr. Danica Hayes. For a second, she thought she had misheard. Then the screen cut to a grand hall, chandeliers blazing, cameras flashing. I was walking down a red carpet aisle in a simple dark gown, my hair pinned up, a small medal gleaming at my collarbone. The ticker at the bottom of the screen spelled it out for them in brutal, crisp letters: Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Linda's wooden spoon slipped out of her hand and clattered against the stove. Courtney froze, the sequined jacket halfway off its hanger. She knew that face. She knew the way my jaw tightened when I was trying not to show too much. She had seen it once, a lifetime ago, in the reflection of a microwave door as she fed my acceptance letters into a shredder. In Stockholm, I climbed the steps to the stage and took the medal from the king's hand, the applause washing over me like a sound from another planet. When they asked me to speak, I did not talk about genius or luck or destiny. I talked about a girl in a cramped kitchen whose 5 letters to a different life were destroyed by the people who were supposed to protect her. I did not say, my mother, or my sister. I said, someone I loved, and people who feared what they did not understand. I talked about how, for a long time, I believed their voices more than my own, how I almost stayed small to make them comfortable. Then I talked about the teachers who stepped in, the mentors who opened doors, the strangers who believed in a brain they did not share blood with. As I spoke, the camera cut between my face and the audience, but somewhere a producer chose to flash old photos they had pulled from university archives. Me in an MIT lab coat. Me clutching a diploma. Me standing beside Dr. Park. Both of us laughing in front of a whiteboard filled with formulas. Back in that dingy kitchen, Courtney grabbed the remote and turned up the volume. Like proximity to the sound would change what she was hearing. Linda shook her head, whispering no, over and over, as if she could will the broadcast into belonging to some other family. On screen, I said one last line, the one that would play on loop for the next 24 hours. I said that sometimes the people who try to burn your future down are the exact reason you learn how to build something fireproof. The audience stood and clapped. In a silent apartment covered in overdue notices, my sister and my mother watched me become someone the whole world suddenly recognized, and for the first time, they had to sit with a question they had never bothered to ask. What if the life they shredded had not died at all, but simply grown beyond their reach? The emails started less than 24 hours after the ceremony. At first, I thought they were just the usual flood you get when your name jumps from academic journals to the front page. But then I saw the subject line, "So proud of you, sis." The exclamation marks were what gave her away. Courtney's message was 3 screens long, a tangled mix of nostalgia and selective amnesia. She wrote about how she had always known I would do something big, how she used to brag about me to her followers, how life had just gotten in the way. Buried in the middle of all that sugar was the real reason she had tracked down my institute email, a paragraph about overdue rent, dangerous people she owed money to, and a gentle reminder that Nobel winners received like millions, right? She signed off with, "Family takes care of family. We just need a little help to get back on our feet. Love you." An hour later, a voicemail from Linda appeared in my inbox, forwarded by the lab's main line. Her voice was older, raspier, but the rhythm was exactly the same. She started with tears, telling me she had watched the broadcast and almost had a heart attack from pride. Then, without pausing, she rewrote history. She said she had only pushed me to work because she didn't want me to get hurt by disappointment. That shredding those letters was tough love, something I would understand one day. By the time she got to the part about her medical bills and the stress and the doctors and what it would mean for a mother to die without seeing her daughter again, my jaw hurt from clenching it. I listened to the whole thing, every manipulative sigh and carefully timed sniffle, then deleted it. I answered Courtney with one line. I am glad you are alive, and I hope you find a way to build a life that does not depend on anyone else's money. I did not answer Linda at all. The next wave was uglier. When "we are proud of you" did not work, they shifted to "you owe us." Courtney sent a voice note threatening to tell reporters I was a cold, ungrateful child who abandoned her sick mother. Linda followed up with an email listing every diaper she said she had changed, every double shift she claimed she had worked for me, as if basic parenting were an invoice I was 12 years late paying. I forwarded everything to the legal office at the Institute, and they referred me to a lawyer in New York named Marcus Reed. On our first call, I told him I did not want to be dragged into a public mud fight, but I also refused to be blackmailed by the same people who once told me my dreams were garbage. He listened quietly, then said, "You have more leverage than you think." A week later, he sent me a packet of public records he had pulled. Courtney and Linda were drowning in debt, maxed out credit cards, payday loans, a car note in default, months of unpaid rent on a crumbling 2-bedroom outside Boston. They were not just broke, they were radioactive. I stared at the list of creditors, feeling a mix of anger and something that almost looked like pity. Almost. Then, a month after that, an email hit Marcus's inbox from a distressed asset firm in the States. They specialized in buying bad debts for pennies on the dollar, bundling lives into portfolios. One portfolio, in particular, had just become available. All of the delinquent accounts belonging to Linda and Courtney Hayes. The price to take it off their hands was less than what my patents generated on a slow quarter. Marcus forwarded the message to me with a single line. If you want complete silence and complete control, this is one way. I looked at the number. For a long minute, I just sat there in my Stockholm office, the northern sky dull and gray outside the window, thinking about a shredded stack of letters and a house key I once left on a kitchen counter. They had always believed money was the only thing that mattered. Fine. If that was the language they spoke, I was finally fluent enough to answer them. The conference room in Marcus Reed's Manhattan office looked like something out of a movie I would never have been able to afford a ticket to when I was 18. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a long glass table that showed every fingerprint, a view of the city so high up it almost did not feel real. I sat at the far end with a folder in front of me and my Nobel medal tucked under my blouse, the cool metal pressing against my skin like a reminder of why I was there. Marcus stood by the door, checking his watch. "They are here," he said finally, and for a second I felt that old familiar tremor run through my hands. Then the door opened, and my past walked in, wearing cheap perfume and desperation. Courtney came in first, 3 inches of heel on shoes she could not really walk in, a knockoff designer bag hanging from her arm. Her hair looked like she had tried to style it the way she used to for brand deals, but the split ends and dull color told the truth. Linda followed, leaning a little on the doorframe, clutching her purse like someone was going to rip it away. Their eyes lit up when they saw the room, the view, the suit on Marcus. I could almost see the math happening in their heads. Money, power, leverage. "Danny," Linda said, like the last decade had been a bad dream we had all woken up from together. "Baby, look at you." Courtney went straight into performance mode, stretching her arms like she wanted to hug me but stopping just short. "This is insane," she said. "My little sister meeting us in a place like this. We knew you would come through." She dropped a thick envelope onto the table, papers spilling halfway out. "We brought everything," she added, tapping the stack. "Bills, payment plans, ideas for how you can help us reset. Once we get caught up, We can show everyone what a strong family looks like." I let them talk. They painted a picture where they were the struggling heroes, and I was the golden ticket. The solution that would make all their bad choices disappear. When they finally ran out of breath, I slid the folder in front of me across the glass toward them. "You're late," I said quietly. "Those debts are not what they used to be." Courtney frowned, pulling out the top document. Her eyes moved over the lines, confusion knitting her forehead, then tightening into something uglier. The first page was a summary from the distressed asset firm, listing every account under their names. The second page was the assignment agreement. New creditor, Dr. Danica Hayes. "What is this?" she asked, her voice rising. Marcus answered for me. "It means," he said, smooth and calm, "that every dollar you owe on every account in that stack is now owed to your sister. The banks do not own you anymore. She does." Linda shook her head so hard her earrings rattled. "You cannot do that. You cannot just buy people's lives." I met her eyes for the first time. "You bought mine pretty cheap," I said. "A shredder and a 2-week eviction notice. This cost me a bit more." Courtney flipped through the pages faster now, hands trembling as she hit the notice from their landlord's management company, the company that, 3 weeks earlier, had accepted a surprise offer from an anonymous investor and changed ownership. At the bottom, in clean black ink, was a signature authorizing a formal demand for payment or vacancy. It was mine. "As of this morning," Marcus said, sliding another paper forward, "you are officially in violation of your lease. You have 72 hours to vacate, or the new owner will initiate eviction proceedings. That new owner, in case the paperwork is confusing, is also your sister." Courtney slammed her palm on the table so hard the glass echoed. "You are punishing us for being poor," she hissed. "We are your family." I thought of 5 envelopes on a kitchen counter, of being told that education was useless, of sleeping on a futon while they pretended I did not exist. "No," I said. "I am holding you accountable for what you did when you had the power and I did not. Poor is not what you did to me. Cruel is." Marcus laid one last document on the table, a draft restraining order. "Given the pattern of harassment and the threats in your recent messages," he said, "Dr. Hayes has grounds to request that you cease all contact. If you continue, this will be filed. You will not be allowed near her home, her workplace, or any public events." Linda started to cry then, loud and messy, the way she used to when a bill collector called during dinner. She reached for my hand, but I pulled it back, folding my fingers into my lap before she could touch me. Security, who had been waiting discreetly in the hall, stepped in when Courtney's voice climbed into a shout. They guided them out of the room while Courtney screamed about betrayal and blood and karma. When the door finally closed and the conference room went quiet again, I stood and walked to the window. The city spread out below like a circuit board, humming with 1,000 lives I would never know. My reflection in the glass looked calm, but my heart was pounding. Justice, I realized, did not always look like handcuffs or prison. Sometimes it looked like a signature on the right line, a choice not to save the people who once took pleasure in watching you drown. In the weeks after that meeting, things unfolded exactly the way the paperwork said they would. The management company posted the notice on Courtney and Linda's door, and 3 days later their neighbors watched as they hauled their lives into the back of a borrowed pickup truck, a stained couch, and mismatched boxes stacked on top of one another. They ended up in a smaller, cheaper apartment on the edge of a town no one brags about living in. Then, eventually, in the anonymous gray of a state housing complex after the bankruptcy filings went through. Someone from a tabloid tried to spin the story into a headline about a heartless Nobel winner who evicted her own family, but there are limits to how far a narrative like that goes when your tearful interviews can be matched. line for line, with public records of harassment and the clip of you feeding your little sister's future into a shredder playing in the background of her Nobel speech. I refused every offer to tell my side for money. I did not need to justify my boundaries to strangers. The only public statement I made after Stockholm was the same one I kept repeating to myself in private. Survival is not ingratitude, and saying no to people who hurt you is not cruelty. With the prize money and the royalties from our drug continuing to grow, I started something my 18-year-old self could not have imagined in her wildest, hungriest dreams. A foundation called the Second Chance Fund. It offered scholarships, emergency housing, and small legal grants to kids whose families were the ones standing between them and the classroom door. The first time I sat across from a 17-year-old from a town in Ohio, listening to her describe how her father had ripped up her community college acceptance because he wanted her on the line at his factory, I felt a ghost of myself sitting beside her at the table. I handed her a folder with a scholarship letter inside and told her that no one who truly loves you will ever be afraid of your success. Some nights, when the lab was quiet and the city outside my window was just a blur of lights, I would think about Courtney and Linda. I did not stalk their social media or ask Marcus for updates, but occasionally their names would float past in public filings or a news alert about a debt being discharged. The old version of me would have wasted energy fantasizing about apologies that never came, about some perfect line that would finally make them understand what they had done. The woman I became understood something else. Closure does not come from the people who broke you suddenly deciding to be different. It comes from deciding their power over you is finished, whether they ever see it that way or not. The best part of my revenge was not watching them move out of that apartment or hearing that their latest attempt at a sympathy interview had flopped. It was walking into a crowded auditorium full of kids with acceptance letters in their hands and knowing that, because of a choice I made, no one was going to stand over a kitchen counter and shred those letters into confetti. In the end, my sister did not just tear up my scholarships. She handed me the origin story for a life that reached far beyond the four walls of our old house. She tried to turn my future into trash, and I turned it into a blueprint. They will probably spend the rest of their lives telling anyone who will listen that I abandoned them. I will spend the rest of mine making sure that when someone tells a young person college is useless, get a job, that kid has somewhere else to turn. And if there is a lesson in all of this, it is simple. You do not have to stay loyal to the people who set fire to your dreams. You are allowed to walk away, build something better, and choose a family that knows the difference between control and love. Our team at Revenge Argonne is dedicated to crafting powerful, meaningful fictional scripts that turn drama into reflection. We promise that every story is purely made up, created only to share life lessons, positive values, and educational messages with our viewers. This script highlights how education and valuable knowledge can break toxic cycles and change a person's destiny. It encourages viewers to set healthy boundaries, believe in their potential, and never let others decide their future for them. Through emotional family conflict and ultimate growth, the story gently teaches resilience, self-worth, and the courage to choose a better path.